Hello and welcome to the Dream Team Professor podcast. My name is Scott and in this episode we're looking at the top players to target in gameweek 34 SUN Dream Team. Now I'm recording this on Wednesday the 1st of May, so we still have two matches to take place. We've got the Chelsea Spurs clash and then we have Aston Villa in the first leg of their Europa League conference match taking place tomorrow. But it's a Friday deadline this week, so don't get caught out by that. Friday, 3rd of May, 7 PM deadline. So do not let that one catch you out. A bit of a strange time for the deadline. We will be doing a deadline stream as always with the Dream Team Tonic, 6 PM. So do keep an eye out for that one. But the final fixture, or the first fixture, of the game week isn't one that's that exciting really. Luton versus Everton. It might be an exciting game, but it's not an exciting game when it comes to team news and transfer plans, etc. So do remember, Friday deadline this week. Set your alarms. Leaks probably not going to be likely or important. Arsenal Bournemouth are the early kickoff on Saturday, but I doubt we're going to get any sort of team news or leaks a day early. So probably going into this game week a little bit blind. So Aston Villa are the only team that have a double game week in game week 34. So quite often we target the doubles, but there aren't many to choose from this week. Just the one. Aston Villa have Brighton away from home, which previously would have looked like a pretty difficult fixture. But they don't really have too much to play for at the minute. They've looked in pretty poor form recently, conceding quite a lot of goals. So I think that does look like a pretty decent fixture at the moment. And then that Olympiacos away fixture, I think we'll have a better idea of how that one looks once we've seen the first leg take place tomorrow. So going into that sort of Olympiacos fixture a little bit blind, but the Brighton game in the single does look okay, or in the first fixture of the double does look okay. If you're not going for Aston Villa players in game week 34, which apart from Ollie Watkins, I'm not feeling that great about. If I wasn't going for Aston Villa players, I would be looking to target teams that have a double game week in game week 35. So ideally, a nice fixture in 34 and a double game week in 35. Because if you look at the fixture ticker from ffstuff.co.uk, now till the end of the season, just the 4 game weeks left, and we've got a bit of a difference between the number of fixtures. So we've got some teams that have got 5, which is City and United. We've got a few teams that are on 4 fixtures, and that's mostly the ones that double game week in game week 35. So you've got Newcastle, you've got Villa that don't double in 35, but obviously they've got the Europa League second leg. Chelsea have got a double game week in 35, Brighton the same, and Spurs the same. So if you're not going to go for Aston Villa this week, I would look at those clubs. I'd prioritise City and United first because they have almost 2 fixtures over quite a few of the other clubs. Then the teams with 4 fixtures, Newcastle, Chelsea, Spurs and Brighton. I'm not actually going to do a slide on Brighton for this episode. I just think their form has been a bit too up and down for me. But Newcastle, Chelsea, Spurs we'll look at in this episode. City and United I think are appealing because of the 5 fixtures, which includes the FA Cup final. And in this episode, I'm going to touch on what do we do with Arsenal, because they have just 3 fixtures, but they're still fighting it out for the title, and they still have some really, really good players and fixtures too. So we're going to touch on Arsenal. And then Liverpool, not so appealing with their recent form, but I feel like there is a bit of insight that we need to give. So this is how we're going to set out the episode. Teams with 5, obviously Villa for the double game week this week, and then the teams with 4. So starting off with Aston Villa, because they are the only team that have a double game week in game week 34. Still to play Olympiacos at home tomorrow, so we'll get a bit more of an insight. But they had the 2-2 draw with Chelsea earlier in the week. And the first half looked really, really impressive from Aston Villa. But then Chelsea managed to get their way back into the game and turn it around. It was a bit of a collapse in that second half for Aston Villa. I didn't really see anything from anyone in that Aston Villa team that sort of made me think I need to really consider this player for the double game week. Ollie Watkins is obvious, we're going to mention him, but his ownership is sky high after last week. But outside of Ollie Watkins, I think it looks like slim pickings. You had Martinez. Emi Martinez might have been on a few people's radar, but he picked up an injury in that game, went off at half-time and was replaced by Olsen. Obviously, he didn't concede in that first half, but still wouldn't have got the clean sheet because he didn't play the 60 minutes. You did have Rodgers, who scored a pretty decent goal, but I feel like he's a little bit unproven for me to consider bringing him in this part of the season. And then you did have a John McGinn assist for a Cucurella own goal, which does move him up as now the second highest scoring player at Villa. He's got 9 goals, 8 assists. But again, are you going to want a John McGinn, despite the double game week, ahead of potentially like a City midfielder? It doesn't really stand out to me. So 4 fixtures remain. Could be 5 fixtures with that Europa League final. But is there anyone else other than Watkins? So Ollie Watkins, now the most owned player in the game. 95% of the top 1K have him. 60% of the top 1K captained him this week. I thought it was going to be a tighter battle for the captaincy between him and Cole Palmer. But 60% went for Ollie Watkins. And you have to think, if 60% this week went for Ollie Watkins, when there was quite a few teams with a double game week, if Aston Villa are the only team to double next week, Ollie Watkins' captaincy percentage has to be in the 90s or 95 plus. Unless something does happen, he picks up an injury or something tomorrow. So I'm expecting a landslide with the captaincy for next week. You'll be a brave person to go against it. He had 2 shots on target against Chelsea and only picked up 4 points, so not that impressive. And if he does have a quiet game against Olympiacos, maybe that will cause a few people to sort of edge towards a single game week player. We've seen this week that with Isak scoring 15 points, there are gems that will deliver in a single game week. But I just feel like you're sort of going against the odds a little bit with someone as good as Ollie Watkins as well. 23 goals, 17 assists for the season, and a 6.4 average across the season as well. He is almost certainly going to be my captain for game week 34. Konsa, he had been on my radar, but just the 1 point against Chelsea. No bonus points, but he does have 52 bonus points for the season. The only thing that I'm considering is how good of a defence Aston Villa are, because we know that Arsenal are a reliable defence. They do have less fixtures, but if Aston Villa don't put in a convincing win against Olympiacos in that first leg, there will be a few doubts whether or not they will get through. And then I start to wonder, maybe the Arsenal defenders in 3 matches versus Villa in 4 or 5. Villa have still got to play Liverpool, Crystal Palace away, Brighton away. How convinced are you that Villa keep clean sheets in those fixtures? I'm not massively convinced with that one. He has been pretty reliable, 4 bonus points, so he could deliver, but recent form hasn't been as good. Douglas Luiz was previously the second highest scoring player at Aston Villa. But he's just got a 1-pointer against Chelsea, and he's continued his poor run. So 1, 3, 2, 1, 2, 4 and 2. All pretty underwhelming recent scores for Douglas Luiz. But he is on penalties, so he is sort of just 1 penalty away from sort of hitting an 8-pointer or whatever. But yeah, again, not entirely convinced. And I touched on John McGinn. Again, doesn't really do it for me. Bailey is the only one that I potentially would be interested in. If he goes and gets a couple of attacking returns against Olympiacos, then maybe I could be swayed. He's on 12 goals, 15 assists, has the attacking threat, but he doesn't always have the minutes. He started 2 in a row recently, but quite often he's benched or subbed early. It almost could be better if he's benched against Olympiacos, because that would make me feel that he would be more likely to play extra minutes in the double game week. But overall, again, not entirely convinced. Then we have Manchester City. So 5 guaranteed fixtures from now until the end of the season. They have Wolves at home in a single for game week 34. News has just come out that O'Neill has got a touchline ban for something they did 4 games ago against West Ham. Seems a bit suspect to me as an Arsenal fan, but he now has a touchline ban against Manchester City. So Wolves will be without their manager. And Wolves haven't been in the best of form recently either. So I think that does look like a decent single game week for Manchester City. In game week 35, they have an away double game week against Fulham and Tottenham, which does look quite challenging. I feel like if you look at the fixtures from now until the end of the season, if they were going to drop points, it probably would be in this double game week. Fulham away from home, pretty tough fixture. But from what I'm hearing Spurs fans saying, they'd rather just roll over and let City get the win, it seems like. But I doubt that the players and Ange would have that same mindset. Game week 36 is a West Ham home fixture on the last game of the season. And then in game week 37, they have Manchester United in the FA Cup final. So 5 guaranteed fixtures, whereas with Villa, it's 4 guaranteed fixtures plus a potential 5th if they get to the Europa League conference final. So City probably looking the best if you want to play the fixture game. A 5 fixture versus sort of 3 or 4 for other teams. Maybe 4 in the doubles and 3 if they're just playing single game weeks for the rest of the season. The only downside I can see with these fixtures for City is that, say Arsenal do drop points against Bournemouth or in the next match against Manchester United, if the title race does seem like it's wrapped up, maybe we could see Manchester City sort of rotate in the last game of the season in preparation for the cup final. But there is time in between those 2 fixtures, so we'd have to wait and see. In the news for City, Haaland has returned. Foden missed the last game through illness. And then we've got an Ederson injury that he picked up in the last game. Shoulder injury, left the ground in wearing a sling. But it seemed like he was out for the season. And then the news today was the injury wasn't as significant as first feared. And then Ortega seemed like he was likely to play Wolves. But now it seems that Ederson is back in full training for City. So it keeps changing. I don't think we're going to get that much clarity on it. Hopefully Pep will clear that up. But he isn't renowned for being that honest with these talks. We're going to start off with Erling Haaland. So is it time to bring back Erling Haaland? He returned to the squad this game week after being missing through injury. He came off the bench to score, and so came away with 8 points. I went against Haaland this week. I removed him. We didn't have clarity before the deadline that he was definitely going to be available to start. So I took a risk and went against him. It didn't turn out too badly because I went for Son instead. Son did get an attack in return and matched Haaland, and Son still has a game to play. My alternative would have been to take out Saka, and Saka went on to haul this game week. So turned out okay for me, but I don't want to push my luck. I will definitely want Haaland back for this game week. Wolves did beat Manchester City 2-1 the last time they played, and then actually Dawson put in a really good performance marking Haaland. I remember on Match of the Day they were showing a lot of the highlights of Dawson man marking Haaland. But Craig Dawson is out injured for this match, so maybe this could be a better looking fixture for Erling Haaland than it did before. Kevin De Bruyne, 2 assists, 9 points against Forest. Just got 17 assists from 20 games this season. Really, really great form. Seems like he's put the injury behind him now. Also has 6 goals for the season. So a ton of attacking returns already. I'd expect him to play every single game from now until the end of the season. As long as the title is still alive, the challenge is still there. But yeah, if Arsenal do end up dropping points, or Man United, Manchester City end up securing the title early, maybe he could get a rest ahead of that cup final. But while everything is still to play for, I think that KDB is a really, really good option. 2 assists, 2 shots on target this match, and a big chance created. Phil Foden missed the Forest game through illness, and we didn't really hear anything about this pre-deadline or even pre-lineups. I think the first sort of time we heard about it was a little bit before the lineups would have come out. Normally, it does seem like City have managed to get rid of the leaks. There have been a lot of players with illness recently. Cole Palmer, for example. I know Kevin De Bruyne missed the Real Madrid game, the first leg. It does seem like a lot of these players are only sort of missing for the first fixture or one fixture. So I'm pretty sure we can keep hold of Foden, but we may want to sort of keep an eye on Pep's press conference to see if he does tell us that Phil Foden is back. But at the moment, I'm not thinking about taking Foden out of my team. I think he's like Kevin De Bruyne. If he is fit, I expect him to play every game. Outside of the power three of Haaland, KDB and Foden, I'd probably say Bernardo Silva is the next one on my radar. And I probably wouldn't be looking to add an extra City player if they didn't have these extra fixtures. And it was only when I sort of started to look at Aston Villa options where I just kind of thought, would I not just prefer to add an extra Man City player to the mix? So only the 4 points against Forest. He's got 11 goals, 6 assists for the season. And he has started 4 matches in a row now. His only rests came sort of either side of that knockout match against Real Madrid. He is always favoured for these big matches. And every match from now until the end of the season is going to be a big, important match for Manchester City with the title race. So I think Bernardo Silva could be a decent outside option from Manchester City. Shows up in big games and he does have those sort of big clutch moments. So I like Bernardo Silva as an option. Ederson to Ortega, I don't know where I'd stand if I had Ederson. I've got Raya currently, so I don't need to really worry about it. If I had Ederson, if you had immediate stuff that you needed to do elsewhere, maybe you could just hang on for one more week, see if you think he'll be back for that double game week and game week 35. But with the doubts around, will Ederson be okay? Will Ortega play? And even if Ortega came in against Wolves, would he definitely be the keeper all the way through to the FA Cup final if the Ederson injury is not that serious? I'm not 100% sure. So I think I would probably not do Ederson to Ortega unless we heard Ederson was definitely out. I would probably do an Ederson to Onana at this point. But I'll have a slide on Manchester United, so we'll come on to that later. Defence-wise, 5 fixtures versus 3 if you've got Arsenal defenders at the moment. The reason I say Arsenal is because I think that City and Arsenal are the 2 best defences in the league consistently. I think they're more reliable than Aston Villa, who have the 4 fixtures. United have got the extra fixture. They've actually got 5 fixtures, but I don't feel that convinced about United. All other options at the moment, you've got Newcastle, we've got a lot of injuries. Chelsea have got a lot of injuries as well. So Liverpool conceding quite a lot. So I think that from now until the end of the season, I'm going to try and stick to City or Arsenal at the back. It's 3 clean sheets in a row for City now. The two players that I'd be interested in from City at the back would be the man at the moment, Vardiol. 3 goals and 1 assist in his last 5. So really has gotten a taste for the attacking returns recently. I don't know if we can really rely on it continuing, but it has continued now for a few matches. A 5.3 average overall. And I expect him to carry on starting while he's in form. I don't see any reason why he would sort of get a bench in unless he gets sort of 1 rest out of this 5. But even if you got 4 fixtures from Vardiol, I feel like that's better than 3 fixtures from Arsenal and the 4/5 from Aston Villa. My second target would be Kyle Walker. And then similar to Bernardo Silva, I just think that Walker is trusted for these big games. Wears the armband at times. He started 4 in a row. And I'd only really expect sort of Rico Lewis to come in if the title was won. As attacking returns go, Kyle Walker has got 5 assists. Manchester United have 5 fixtures as well, similar to City. But I don't think their fixture run looks anywhere near as good, and we know they're not really reliable. Crystal Palace away from home looks like a pretty horrible fixture with their recent form. A double game week in 35 of Arsenal at home, Newcastle at home does look challenging. And then 36 Brighton away, 37 Manchester City in the cup final. I don't think this looks like a really, really good run, to be honest with you. The only person that I would be majorly interested in, he's already in my squad, it's Bruno Fernandes. And by the looks of things, he's in most people's squads. 90% ownership in the top 1k. And I'm expecting that to remain high with the upcoming double. Although the Crystal Palace away fixture isn't great, it's not bad enough that you'd get rid of Bruno Fernandes. He is consistently in good form at the moment. 8 points against Burnley. What did he get here? So he got 6 player performance marks, got him 1 bonus, 1 shot on target, and 4 big chances created. If only there was someone to get on the end of these big chances. It's the first game in his last 5 where he hasn't got an attack in return, and he's got 9 attack and returns in his last 6 matches. So for me, Bruno Fernandes has to stay. Anthony, great score. I think he was the highest scoring player of the game week this week. 17 points, 3 bonus, 6 shots on target, and 4 tackles. But I think it's an outlier. I wouldn't be fooled. Not for me at all. If you think it will carry on and you're looking for a differential, maybe, but I would not be going for Anthony. Garnacho, if there was a second attacking player from United that went for, it would be Garnacho. Did look pretty good off the left, but just not good enough for me to consider bringing into my side. Defensively, Dalot and Maguire have been of interest recently, probably since that Park the Bus week. But I would be moving on at this stage for an Arsenal defender, or more favourably a City defender, in my opinion. You've got the same amount of fixtures, but it's just a much, much better defence with much better fixtures. If you have got them and you've got other problems, I don't think it's the worst player to be stuck with. Maguire's got attacking threat, Dalot has as well. But it's just the clean sheets. United don't really seem like keeping them. The only United defensive player that I would potentially be interested in is Onana in goal. Managed to get 5 points for 6 saves against Burnley. Probably unlucky in the end to have given the penalty. Well, he gave the penalty away, so I suppose it wasn't unlucky. But the penalty wiped his clean sheet. But I just think with these fixtures, Crystal Palace, good attacking side, especially at home. They're going to have plenty of shots. He is going to be very busy. You've got Arsenal, who are going to have plenty of shots. Onana will be busy. Newcastle at home, Brighton away from home, and then Manchester City. It's going to be saves galore, isn't it, for Onana? So I think he could probably be the best goalkeeping option from now until the end of the season, just for the save points alone. But I wouldn't hold my breath on clean sheets. Newcastle, my stance hasn't really changed much since last week. Isak, Gordon, the 2 main ones to target, both had really, really impressive weeks this week. They demolished Sheffield United as expected, 5-1. Obviously, Isak, a brace, 15 points. And then Anthony Gordon, 2 assists, 10 points. Despite Burnley being their next fixture and looking pretty good on paper, there's a few things that I wanted to sort of highlight. So, despite Burnley having pretty bad form recently, they haven't conceded more than 1 goal in their last 5 matches. So have managed to tighten up a little bit. And then Newcastle have only scored more than 1 goal once in their last 5 matches. So it may not be quite the hammering you're expecting. It could be, but the sort of form indicates that Newcastle haven't been as good away. And then Burnley have managed to tighten up just a little bit in recent form. There has also been talk that Trippier could be back available for that Brighton fixture, but not until game week 35. And at this point of the season, do you really want to be taking a risk on someone who's been out injured for quite some time? And they weren't even in the best of form when they were back. So probably won't be one for me, but maybe something to keep an eye on. So then single in 34, double in 35, and in 36, it's an away match against Brentford. So 4 fixtures for Newcastle. It would just be Isak and Gordon I'm looking at this point. Isak got the brace against Sheffield United. He's got the most points of any striker over the last 5 game weeks with 65 points. And he's hit double figures in 3 of his last 5 matches. So Isak is the informed striker in the Premier League on the game. And if you're looking for a differential in your mini leagues, he is only 16% owned in the top 1k. Obviously just a single this week, but doubles in 35. And that's 2 pretty poor defences. So home to Brighton, Newcastle's home form is fine, it's really, really good. And then away to Man United, who haven't been that great at the back. So Isak in game week 35 looks appealing. Could you go early, get him in for Burnley? I think that's a decent shout. 23 goals, 2 assists, and ownership is still pretty low. You could even push your luck and maybe stick your armband on him. But like I said, Watkins is the standout captain for me. He will be heavily captained. But we've got a potential captain for Isak in game week 35. Gordon, 2 assists, 10 points, Sheffield United, 11 goals, 16 assists for the season. And he is taking set pieces, putting in some decent corners as well while Trippier is out. I don't see myself bringing him in, but could be a decent differential. But yeah, like I said, Gordon and Isak both have got really good home records, but not so great away. I'm just not sure on this stat whether or not are Gordon and Isak bad away from home, or is it just Newcastle as a collective who haven't been doing that well in their away matches? It seems strange to me that 2 players would just not be able to perform away from home. Defence, probably an avoid. More injuries for Newcastle at the back. Fabian Schär went off injured. He's now doubtful for the next game, so I wouldn't really fancy banking on clean sheets for Newcastle. If you've been enjoying the video so far, please do leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Once this season ends, it kicks back off again with the Dream Team Euros game. I'm planning to put out a ton of Euro content over the summer, so do subscribe, follow along if you're going to carry on playing the Dream Team Euros game over the summer. And also do check out the Dream Team Tonic podcast. Our latest episode is up on YouTube and podcast platforms for everyone. We'll be doing our deadline stream Friday 6 PM, so get subscribed to the channel, get notified when we go live. Chelsea up next. So they still have a match against Tottenham this game week, game week 33. And that takes place tomorrow. So we'll have a little bit more insight on Chelsea going into the weekend's games. They then face West Ham at home in a single, game week 34. A away double in game week 35 of Forest and Brighton. And then 36, ending the season at home to Bournemouth. So not a bad fixture run for Chelsea. Actually, I imagine a lot of us are probably going to end up keeping Cole Palmer till the end of the season. That Villa game, terrible first half, but they actually did fight back in that second half and put in a pretty good second half display, coming away with a 2-2 draw. Madueke and Gallagher with the goals. Madueke actually had a really good game, so 13 points from him, a goal and assist, 3 bonus points. Not someone I've actually considered or had on my radar this season, and I probably won't either, but maybe one to watch out for next season. Palmer had a quiet game coming back from illness, so maybe that's something we need to consider with Phil Foden. If Phil Foden's injured, maybe he might struggle in his first match back. He only come away with 3 points, so between Watkins and Palmer, that battle for the captaincy, so far pretty level and pretty disappointing. So Palmer's my captain. I hope he does a bit more against Spurs. Thiago Silva picked up an injury. They're now down to the bare bones with their defence. Gusto has targeted that West Ham game, but I don't think it's set in stone that he will be back. So overall, I think there's probably better defences than Chelsea at the minute. Pretty much the same targets as last week from Chelsea. So Cole Palmer, if you haven't got him already, despite him not looking great against Villa, he has been so good all season. Still Spurs to play, so he might still turn it on. But he's 89% owned in the top 1k, and he was the second highest captain player with 32% this game week. So Cole Palmer still firmly in my plans for the rest of the season. West Ham are a bottom 3 defence for expected goals against and 4th bottom for goals against. So this home fixture, I think, does look a decent one for them. But will it be decent enough for Nicholas Jackson? So hit the post against Aston Villa and had a goal disallowed for offside. I feel like he was quite unlucky to come away with just the 2 points. Favourable home fixture. That double game week in game at 35 does look okay if you're looking for a differential punt. But like I've pointed out, Isak, he can finish his dinner, whereas Jackson, I think you're sort of hoping for something, but not feeling that confident about it. Maybe his luck will turn around against Spurs or West Ham. 13 goals, 6 assists, but I'm not feeling entirely confident. And that's coming from someone that's put him in their FPL team. Conor Gallagher. I highlighted him as a solid pick last week. 5 people in the top 1k actually bought him in, so well done to you guys, because he actually had a really good game. 8 points for him, scored a goal, had a shot on target, and just the 1 tackle actually. But 6 goals, 10 assists for the season. Performed well, and he has been pretty decent this season. But I just think it's a bit of a boring pick. But I think it highlights how the new scoring system does deliver for some differentials. So he's on 240 points now for the season. And just for context, that is level with Luis Diaz from Liverpool. 7 points less than Pascal Gross, who's been pretty impressive for most of the season. And just 15 points behind Martin Odegaard, who has been on fire recently. So, again, I reiterate, I'm not picking Conor Gallagher, but just something to consider. Maybe there are a few people for next season, if the rules stay the same, that might go under the radar. On to Spurs. Didn't quite happen for them in North London derby. Unlucky Spurs. 3-2 to Arsenal. Did fight back though in the second half after that Raya mistake. But they do still have 1 game to come in this game week 33 taking place tomorrow. So they are away at Chelsea. Next week they have an away match against Liverpool, which on paper isn't ideal. But Liverpool are having a few problems recently. Obviously that loss to Everton, the draw to West Ham, and they've been poor defensively recently. So maybe Spurs could do something against Liverpool in the single. Game week 35 looks more appealing. So Burnley at home, followed by City at home, where Spurs are obviously going to do Arsenal a favour and make City drop points, we hope. And then game week 36 away against Sheffield United, who are now relegated. So I don't know how that one will go. Depends if Spurs also have stuff to play for. But I think on paper you'd have to say the Burnley fixture and the Sheffield United fixture do look pretty good for someone like Son. 8 points for Son this week. I feel like he was pretty fortunate. Again, like I said, I bought him in this week. I felt pretty fortunate that he did score a goal because he was quiet this game. 8 points for him with that penalty put away. I still think that Spurs could cause Liverpool problems, so I'm not in any rush to take Son out. He got 3 shots on target in the last meet against Liverpool and a goal. 16 goals, 9 assists for the season. His ownership jumped to 23% in the top 1k last week. I still think there is an opportunity to have him as a differential, especially in that double game week 35. If you're looking to do something different in that game week. Outside of Son, though, I'm not convinced by Spurs. Obviously, Romero scored that goal, going rogue, pushing forward. Davies got an assist, but now he's ruled out injured and he had a pretty terrible game. Werner out for the season as well. So, again, slim pickings. You did have Kulusevski, picked up 7 points, managed 10 player performance marks, but he hasn't consistently shown that he can do it. And then Maddison doesn't quite look right at the minute. Keeps getting subbed early, and a lot of Spurs fans are calling for him to not start the next game. So, outside of Son, not convinced by Spurs. And then my team, Arsenal. What do we do? Because we have 3 fixtures left, so quite a few less than Man City, Man United, and then even 1 less than the likes of Aston Villa and the teams that double in game week 35. It was a nerve-wracking 3-2 win in the North London derby. Started off so well with that 3-0 at half-time, but then a rare mistake made it a bit shaky for Arsenal and also cost me my triple clean sheet with my Arsenal backline. Just the 3 fixtures remain: Bournemouth at home, Man United away, and Everton at home. The Bournemouth fixture at home does look pretty good. Like, I'd be worried to take out my Arsenal attackers, and I'd also be worried to take out the Arsenal defenders. But Bournemouth's form has been good recently. I think this calendar year they were doing really, really well. So it may not be as easy as we think. Game week 35 away at Manchester United will always be a tough game. And in game week 36, Everton at home. I feel a little bit better about that one now that Everton are pretty much mathematically safe from relegation. So these 3 fixtures aren't terrible at all, but there is just 3 of them. So what do we do? Do we stick or twist with the Arsenal players? So Saka, 14% owned. 14% of the top 1K transferred him out this week ahead of his 16-pointer against Spurs. So that would have been a real kick in the teeth. Goal, assist, 3 bonus and 5 tackles. It feels difficult to remove Saka at the moment. I think it was 13 points in the game week previous, even though he didn't get any attack and returns. And both, well, sort of all the fixtures do look decent. You can see him doing all right in all 3. It's just whether or not you think you can bring in a player that will score more than him. For example, my front 7 currently, I only have one player that doesn't double in game week 35, and that is Saka. And I've still got Erling Haaland that I need to get back in the team. So I'm considering taking Saka out reluctantly, but it does feel like it could be one that punishes me. And it does feel like you're taking out a player in good form with good fixtures. So it is really something to consider. Let me know if you are thinking about or have already taken Saka out of your team. Kai Havertz, 11 points, got a goal and an assist against Spurs, and also got one ruled out for a tight offside. 13 goals, 8 assists for the season, and he seems to be starting every single match as centre forward now, so a decent option, but again, lack of fixtures. I would rather have a doubler, but if you are looking for a differential, just 2% owned in the top 1K. Defence. This is the real stick or twist one, because the defence does look okay, apart from that sort of brain fart from Raya. We've looked okay. At one point, I did feel quite confident that I was going to end up with a triple clean sheet against Spurs, but it wasn't to be. There's a strong argument, I think, of moving Arsenal defenders onto Man City defenders now for the potential extra 2 fixtures. Maybe if you factor in that there's a chance you sort of get one benching from your defender from City's 5, it could only be a 4 fixture versus 3. But if you get lucky, you may end up with all 5. It's a tough one. I've got Virgil van Dijk at the minute, so I'm prioritising getting Van Dijk out well ahead of getting my Arsenal defenders out. But I am considering moving my defenders from Arsenal to Manchester City, possibly for game week 35 to get that 2-for-1. Raya probably stays now till the end of the season, but I can see myself moving on 2 of my Arsenal to Manchester City by the end. Then Liverpool, this is not as much of a one to target, but 3 games remain. Spurs at home, Villa away, and Wolves at home. They've dropped points again against West Ham to pretty much end their title run. Salah was the main highlight, benched. A lot of people did get to see that team news before the deadline and moved him out. He then had the bust up of Klopp when he was asked to come on. The next fixtures do look challenging. I think it's probably time to move on your Liverpool players. Defensively, I'm looking to move on Virgil van Dijk, like I said. The clean sheet against Atalanta was the only clean sheet in their last 13 matches. So defensively, just not been at it. Robertson is the only one that's really, really impressed me. He's been getting bonus points regularly. He got a goal and 9 points in this one. And obviously Trent did get that sort of free kick goal that got us all excited. But overall, I think there's probably more points at the City guys. 55% of the top 1K transferred Salah out after his news that he was dropped. His ownership has now dropped to 42%. I took him out for Son or Watkins, whichever way you want to say it. I do still see that Salah is going to start the next game. Klopp seemed to mention that it was all sorted, but then Salah said his comments about if he talks, there will be fire. But I imagine that they'll probably settle it by the next game. And I did think that Salah actually versus Ben Davies looked like a really good matchup after seeing how Saka sort of destroyed him. But now Ben Davies is out with an injury for the rest of the season, so I've got no idea who Spurs are going to play at left back. If you have got Salah, it would be a real differential, because I imagine that more people are going to take him out after this week. But if I had him, quite honestly, I probably would still move him out. But if you did have him and there's other fires to sort out, could be a nice differential, because you don't see Spurs keeping a clean sheet at Anfield, and you can probably see Salah delivering if he starts, but there is a risk involved. Right, team update for game week 33. If you've enjoyed the video so far, please do leave a like. Up to 147th overall. A very slight green arrow from 151st at the end of last week. But I am hoping to climb up a few more places with Son, Watkins and Palmer still to play this game week. But I've got Palmer as my captain. So if Watkins outscores him, I might end up dropping the other way. But to have 3 players still involved is looking fairly promising. So Son and Watkins came in this week for Haaland and Salah. Haaland, like I said, did score, but Son matched him, and Son has a game to go. So I'm pretty happy with how that went. And then if I was going to have taken someone out instead of Haaland, it would have been Saka, who picked up the 16 points. So overall, happy with how that decision went. But I cannot deal with the stress of not having Haaland in my team when he is fit and available. He looked dangerous when he came back on. So tough decision now, who to take out of my team to get Haaland back. That is going to be the hard decision for me. The easy decision is going to be Virgil van Dijk coming out of my team. Another 1-pointer. Probably be a straight swap for Vardiol or Kyle Walker. They're the two I'm liking the look of. Vardiol obviously in better recent form with those attacking returns, but Walker's still a really good option as well. When I'm trying to look at players to take out for Haaland, though, this is a real trouble. So I've obviously got Son, who doubles in 35. Watkins, who doubles and will be my likely captain for next week. Bruno, who has Palace and then doubles in 35. De Bruyne, really good form. Got more fixtures, got those 5 fixtures and has that double in 35. Palmer, again, I can't take him out. Phil Foden has the fixtures there, has the double in 35, but maybe if we hear some news that he's not quite right for the Wolves game, he could be my switch to Haaland, but I'm only going to want him back again. So it does just sort of point out Saka, but I don't feel that confident taking him out ahead of the Bournemouth home game. So I'm going to have a hard decision to make. I'm not entirely sure who to do. The only other option would be that probably Bruno Fernandes and Son probably have the worst looking fixtures. If you had to say Saka to Bournemouth, Bruno to Palace and Son to Liverpool, Bruno and Son probably have the worst fixture, but I think I'm probably going to want Bruno Fernandes or Son back. So that is going to be a little bit tough. I guess the only other thing that I could do is that if I don't like Son against Liverpool, which I think it's okay, I could maybe take Son out for Haaland again. So I've only just brought him in, but I'll take him out again. And then when it gets to game week 35, that double game week, maybe I just ignore Son and I can look to take Saka out for the single and bring like an Isak in for the double. Few things to think about, but currently I'm leaning Saka out of my team, but it doesn't feel great. It doesn't feel quite right. So this is what my team would look like. Captaincy, I can't really see past Ollie Watkins unless there's an injury tomorrow. Brighton haven't been on the best of form defensively, and also Van Heck is now out for the season as well. They're sort of key centre-back alongside Dunk. So I think that plays into Watkins' hands a little bit as well. So Watkins, can't see past him for the captaincy. So Raya, I'd keep in goal. I'm pretty happy to keep him for the rest of the season. Vardiol would come in for Virgil van Dijk. I'd keep the double up, or it'd be a triple up actually, for Arsenal against Bournemouth at home, which I'm pretty comfortable with. Foden, if we know he's okay. If he's not, then probably Saka stays and comes in for Foden. Palmer against West Ham. Bruyne against Wolves, and Bruno Fernandes away at Palace. Haaland, Son and Watkins with the captaincy. So I think that looks pretty well set up. I still got 4.9 million in the bank, which I'm never going to spend. Is there anything else we can buy with that? Can we redeem any of it? But yeah, that's pretty much how my team's looking. And then maybe, like I said, if I do decide I want to keep Saka, I can maybe sort of take Son straight back out of the team again. Maybe Son puts in a performance that isn't impressive, because he wasn't great against Arsenal. He just got a lucky pen. So if he doesn't really do anything against Chelsea, maybe I'll be inclined to take Son out and leave Saka in for one more week, then bring Isak in game week 35. That's roughly how I'm thinking, but there's no point planning that far ahead, because it just seems like we get some sort of injury or something always happens before the deadline, like a Salah benching. So good to have these plans in place, but never quite happens, does it? That is it for this episode. Join us for the deadline stream on Friday, 6 p.m. with the Dream Team Tonic podcast. Do leave a like on the video if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel and head over to the latest episode of the Dream Team Tonic podcast. I'll put a link at the end of this episode. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.